1. So I'm a professional chef and have been for a few years. And in Australia, apprentice chefs are trained in a sort of college where we learn about 150 recipes. Now, many of the recipes are provided to the students in bulky, finicky booklets that you wouldn't really want to take anywhere with you, so I started writing some of the recipes in a separate notebook, along with some other recipes I'd learned from co-workers or family members, and created a sort of pseudo-cookbook. And I would often bring this book into the kitchen so I would remember ingredient quantities and cooking times, and eventually I would leave the book in the kitchen pretty much around the clock. What I soon found out was that some of the other chefs in the kitchen were using my cookbook to check official recipes for the restaurant we worked for, as typically the head chef would have to tell them, and this got annoying for everyone. And this restaurant was a part of a popular sports club in the local area, so consistency was extremely important to management. As such, having a written record of the new recipes or changes to long-time recipes was very important. As it turned out, management had stopped making changes to the official club recipe book a few months before I even started, so my book became the de facto official recipe book. For a while, this was no issue to me, and I kept adding new recipes to it throughout the next few years. However, after my third year working there, I finished my studies and became fully qualified as a chef, so I suddenly became more expensive to keep on as a staff member. And as such, management started looking for any reason to replace me with a new apprentice. Eventually, they found someone to replace me and gave a half-assed reason for firing me and told me to take all my things and leave, as I could no longer offer what they were looking for. So I took everything I owned and left, including the notebook with all the club's recipes. For a few days, not a whole lot happened, but slowly the club's reviews started complaining about bland food, dry cakes, inconsistent classic recipes, and every other food-related thing you could think of. At one point, there were 50 negative reviews in a single day, which for our town was a massive amount of negative reviews in one day. It felt pretty damn good, since I felt they deserved it, and left me unemployed on short notice. However, I was quickly offered a new job by a smaller restaurant, whose owner knew me from the sports club kitchen, the malicious compliance. After about a week, I received multiple calls, and after answering one, I heard one of the higher managers at the sports club asking if I could return the book as the kitchen needed it back. I obviously laughed and said firmly that it was my book full of my recipes, so it wasn't going anywhere near them, reminding them that they had told me I could no longer offer what they were looking for. The manager clearly began to panic as he offered to give me my job back and just let bygones be bygones. I already had a new job, so I completely brushed off this offer and ignored him. I hung up pretty soon after that. I started putting the recipes for my book on the new restaurant's menu, and it was beginning to attract a few regular customers of the sports club, so I quickly found myself with more and more responsibility and command within the kitchen, to the point that about a third of the menu was from my book. Now, this slow trickle of sports club regulars picked up speed after about 3 months, and led to several high-level managers from the club deciding to visit the restaurant I'd helped build and virtually demanded I give them my cookbook, claiming it would be much more beneficial for the community if they had it. My head chef laughed in their faces and told them to piss off. It's been about 2 years, and my head chef and I have a very positive relationship, and the customer base we have at the restaurant is better than ever. We didn't take every customer from the big club, but it was enough to damage the profits to scare a few investors away, and also led to a decent bit of damage to one of the higher managers' reputations. Furthermore, the recipe issues and negative reviews led to the majority of the kitchen quitting, and according to one of my old colleagues, they cited the lack of support and organization from upper management as the final reasons everyone was quitting, and this led to an even larger dip in the quality of the restaurant food. I also get paid significantly more at this restaurant than I was at the sports club. 2. Years ago, when I was a lot younger, I used to know this complete brat of a kid that would come and visit my cousin sometimes, which coincided with when I would visit too. The kid was neighbors with my cousin, and his mom and my cousin's mom were good friends for a bit, so they both came over to my cousin's house frequently as a result. This brat of a kid had some serious behavioral issues, in that he could pretty much murder someone and his mom would just give him a slap on the wrist and a stern scolding. Some of his favorite things to do was to hit both me and my cousin, especially when he didn't get his way, yell and scream constantly, throw things at us, and throw tantrums. His favorite thing to do was to hunt down a pair of scissors and go to town on anything and everything he could cut or scratch things with. It was so bad that they literally had to hide the scissors from him, and he would go through their drawers looking for them when he wasn't being watched, so he could continue his destructive habits. Some of the things he did was he scratched his name into my cousin's dresser, cut up clothing she had, cut up dolls, cut up toys, cut up paper to the point where he might as well have been a human shredder, honestly. With the worst thing he cut being my cousin's water bed, in which he did it when they were going to go out to eat, so it meant when he cut the bed, it allowed it to leak everywhere and flooded her room. As they were gone for a couple of hours before they discovered what he did, all of which was swept under the rug by his mom. Well, after a while I had enough of his crap, and I can't remember why we were in the basement, but one day all three of us went down together. Well, my cousin went upstairs before the both of us did. If I remember correctly, I stayed behind to ensure that he didn't find and destroy something, as there were tools in the basement. As we were coming back upstairs, I had a very evil idea strike me, which was to run ahead of him, turn the lights off, and shut the door on him so he couldn't get out. Which I did, and pretended like nothing had happened, until the adults discovered what I did. About 5 minutes later, the adults finally noticed he was missing and went looking for him, and found him sobbing in the basement. Now, the basement wasn't entirely dark. It had windows that let some light in, but it scared him enough to at least straighten up a bit. I, of course, got in a ton of trouble, and as punishment, had to sit in the basement for 5 minutes with the lights out. Didn't bother me much, to be honest. He also didn't come around much anymore after that. Low-key, I think my aunt and uncle were getting fed up with his destructive habits, but I'm pretty sure I helped a bit too. Do I regret what I did? Nope, not at all. Wish I did it sooner when I was a kid. Would I do it again? Nah, I'm not that evil normally. But damn it all, when you push my buttons enough, I can get creative. 3. So my friend Gina, who graduated 2 years prior to me, but we still keep in touch, told me about how she dealt with her disrespectful mother-in-law, Lana, who always had an opinion about how Gina did things. Gina and her husband live together in a house. It even has an office for her to work as a data analyst. But it's also close to Lana's house, who was widowed 5 years prior, meaning she got frequent visits from her where she would always comment on every little thing from her cooking, cleaning, even job. She was of the belief that Gina's office was actually a game room, or streaming setup due to the similar look, several monitors, I don't know. And at first, Gina let it slide for the first 2 months. But when Lana wouldn't let up, she told her husband Rick to do something about his mother's comments. Now, I personally have met Rick twice, and from the get-go he seemed like someone who doesn't like confrontation. So when she told us about how he hadn't done anything about his mom, we weren't surprised. Don't get me wrong, he's very nice and supportive. He just dragged his heels on telling his mother to stop sharing her opinion about Gina and her lifestyle. Here comes a malicious compliance. Gina decided to comply with Lana's requests and told us how she did it. For the past several months, every time Lana would insult her cooking, cleaning, or job, she wouldn't do any of those things for her for 2 weeks. She said that it started small with her saying that the baked chicken she made was so bland, despite already eating it. So Gina cooked for herself and Rick, but not for Lana, didn't even give her a plate. When the 2 weeks were up, she finally cooked for her. Gina said she dug in like a wild hog into meat. But to me, that just shows she really did enjoy the food and just wanted to be mean. Gina says that she similarly did this for when she criticized her job, meaning she wouldn't buy her anything when she asked nor lend her money. Gina ended by telling us that Lana is much more behaved now, meaning she's not as openly opinionated as before, and comes over to their home less often. Gina and Rick did have a fight or two over Gina's actions, which, to be frank, were spiteful. But if I'm honest, if Rick had just talked to his mom like Gina asked, this could have been avoided. But that's not my place to say. They talked about it and he apologized for his inaction, and right now Gina says it's all stable for now. Four. For context, I work at a well-known luxury department store in the shoe salon. To start, let's call this horrible coworker. I'd been working there for about 8 months when they brought in horrible coworker. None of my team was thrilled, especially considering our boss had said he would stop after he hired coworker number 7. We work solely on commission, so the more people means less of the pie. This is kind of important later. Her first day inevitably came, and while at first things were okay for about a month, the drama and toxic environment soon followed. In the past, I've found it extremely difficult to trust my gut because of my severe anxiety, but this time I just knew instantly. I got trashy vibes from her on day 1. I knew I wasn't going to be able to trust her. I won't go into full detail, but here are some general instances for y'all to better understand how much of a trash person she is. She has lied and thrown her team under the bus if it benefited her multiple times. Whenever we called her out on her toxic behavior, she would turn around to our HR department and spin a web of more lies and drama. Our team used to be super chill amongst one another when it came to helping clients, but with her, she was a shark. She would stalk every client and push them to try on shoes and buy them, which sometimes worked frustratingly well, and it pissed us all off and made us feel like we were trying to fight for scraps. Don't forget, we work solely on commission, so this was affecting our paychecks. Not only would she stalk, but she would steal clients. I have confronted her multiple times, only for her to make up some excuse and not give my client back to me. Mind you, our store is prided in the relationships we build with our clients, so this was a giant no-no. She has shown up to work extremely hungover, drunk or coked up, or all of the above at the same time. She has gotten aggressive with some of the sweetest co-workers I know, and shoved them or gotten up in their face. Oh, and just being completely uncordial and unprofessional to them. She has messed up countless times with clients, giving them the wrong size or refusing to ever return their items. At this point, it had been over a year she'd been here, and now I hated this job. Every day I came in and saw she was working too, I was absolutely miserable. We'd all gone to my managers, but there was nothing they would really do. Eventually, we found out that she began dating one of the managers in our store. In the ethics code, that is punishable by instant suspension and/or termination for both involved. We found that out because he worked in the back. He was giving her online curbside sales. I don't know how they did it exactly, but she was getting thousands in extra sales because of this, which is a giant red flag because this is considered fraud. Our loss prevention lead also agreed that it was very suspicious, as did our state human resources director, but nothing was ever done. At this point I was fed up and didn't know what to do. I've remained professional, and I'm a very anxious person who avoids getting into conflicts, so I didn't know what I could do to get back at her for all the crap she's pulled. So at some point, on a day she wasn't working, I just walked over to where our business cards were, and I flipped them over backwards, thinking she would just flip them back over, right? Oh, how deliciously wrong I was. I found out about a month later from a close coworker that she freaked the hell out and immediately ran to our HR and loss prevention, demanding they investigate and find out who did this, complaining that we all hated her and that this was a breach of respect. Well, remember how I mentioned she would run to HR for literally anything we called her out on, or any lie she spun up? Let's just say she was not welcomed with open arms on this. HR just sat there like, "Really? This is what you're here for? Grow up and flip them back around." And loss prevention was like, "Lord Almighty, give me strength, are you serious right now?" To which they actually entertained it and asked 2 of my coworkers if they did it, which they responded no. The managers then berated her for this and wasting their time. It was mildly petty, and I know it's not the most petty thing ever to flip the cards, but it backfired so beautifully, and I feel as smug as Jeremy Clarkson to this day. And several months later, they finally fired her and her manager boyfriend's asses because they got concrete proof on them being together. And this situation just added to her case being built against her. Since then, we are all in happy spirits again. My anxiety has lessened significantly, and while I'm still leaving eventually to go into a completely different career, I'm starting to like this job again. Oh, and the paychecks are much better now. Horrible coworker, if you're here and hearing this, I want you to know that it was me that flipped over your damn cards, and we're all dancing over your career's grave right now. 5. First, some background. I own a tanning salon, and it is open from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. every day. There are usually 5 or 6 girls working part-time there, and the pay is $12 an hour, plus cash commissions on the things they sell, packages and lotions. It's worth noting that it's a small non-chain business in a college town. All of the paychecks are kept in a drawer in individual envelopes with the employees' names on them taped shut. They pick up their envelope on the day, and it has worked well except for one instance. One employee decided to open everyone's envelopes to see their pay, and she was livid that one girl was getting paid $2 more an hour. Instead of just asking me about it, she decided to blast the employee group chat and accuse me of ripping them off, etc. Before you think the same thing, it's worth noting that this is a college town with all college-age workers, which, for my particular salon, it meant that it's very hard to consistently have someone who wants to close weekends. They are all usually going home, have plans, want to study, etc. I try to be super accommodating, and I work around everyone's schedules to the best of my ability. If someone says they cannot work, I do not ask questions, I just accept it and plan accordingly. So the reason this girl made a little extra was because she offered to close both days every weekend because she didn't mind. She didn't want as many week hours, so I offered to pay her a little extra because it was so difficult a lot of the times to schedule that. Plus, those 2 days can be a little slow, so commissions are usually not as good. I guess the girl who snooped never bothered to look at the schedule to see if there was maybe a reason that girl made a little more, even though she really didn't because she worked so few hours. Cue malicious compliance. I explained the situation to all the girls. I told the snooper that she was right, totally a ripoff. I would make sure to fix it. I started scheduling both the snooper and my weekend closer every weekend night for the next 3 weeks. I only needed one person working, but I had done a terrible wrong that needed to be made right. At the extra pay for the snooper, of course. I would have done it longer, but she apologized and said she was totally fine going back to how it was because she wanted her weekends back, and the extra pay wasn't worth it. I guess we could have decided that together if she had just talked to me in the first place, instead of jumping to conclusions. Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to Revenge is Ice Cream, episode 333. And thank you very much to everybody who allowed me to use their stories in this video. Before you go, smack the like button. If you want early access to the videos, then support me on my Patreon, which is linked in the description, as is the Hellfreezer merchandise store. If you especially enjoyed today's video, why not leave a tip? You can do that by clicking on the little heart with a $sign below the video, and select the tip of your choice. You don't have to, but I appreciate it and thank you kindly. Alrighty, now let's move right along to Hellfreezer's question and answer of the day. And today's question is, what is the next purchase you're planning to make? I mention this because lately I've been trying to track down a decent, but not super expensive, green screen. I need it for a project I'm working on now. My actual long-term plan is to paint one of the walls in the room the appropriate color, then light it properly because it's perfect. It's perfectly flat. It's great for it. I'll just remove the wall panels when I'm recording. Not practical right now because it'll be very expensive to get the right paint for it. So, as a cheaper, temporary solution, I'm looking for a green screen. And, I'd found one that would have been perfect the other day, but I was outbid by a bad person on eBay. They're only bad because they outbid me. I'm sure they'll find otherwise. So that's mine. I'm looking for a green screen, and will be for the next few weeks. So why don't you let me know what yours, if any, might be. Before we go, let's have today's answer of the day. Now, I'm recording these revenge videos before episode 30 and 31 go up. So I'll pull the answer from, I'll pull it from embarrassing stories of last week. There we go. And today's answer comes from Dust Warden. And this was in relation to something you're very good at cooking that, have you ever messed it up, even though you're really good at it? And their answer is grilled corn. When I was a teen, I used to do it without thinking and get glorious results. Just butter, salt, and pepper on an ear of corn wrapped in foil. But the trick was how long to grill it. Tried it again later in life and could never get the same results. Might have been a different grill, now that I think about it. Thank you very much for your answer, Dust Warden. And with that, I'm going to head off for now. So until next time, thank you. I think I hear a warm cup of tea in my future. So until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourselves.